Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Farm, the podcast. I'm your host, Jace Young, and today's topic of discussion is this: God's leadership through painful times. So, guys, today I want to talk about just the difficult times and things that we go through in life, especially if you are an entrepreneur or business owner. You have more of those times than you can count. When you go through those times, it's hard, right? To say the least. That's putting it lightly. Like, let's be honest here. It's extremely challenging and makes you question a lot of things that you've done in your life, makes you question a lot of the choices, makes you question your purpose, makes you really question everything when you go through these difficult times in your life. Now, one thing that I wanted to share today was really the reason and the purpose behind why God puts us through those challenging times and really the message from it. So I'll share with you kind of a quick story. So back in 2017 to 2018, my family and I moved down to a town called St. George, Utah. It's southern Utah. It's about an hour and a half northeast of Las Vegas. Beautiful area, beautiful country. It's completely different from Kansas. We loved it down there. But at the end of the day, that trip only lasted about 9 months. Now, I moved down there. This was before I started Legacy Farmer and things like that. I moved down there to take advantage of an opportunity to partner with somebody and help, people with basically setting up whole life insurance policies and stuff like that. If you know my story and stuff, you know that I did that prior to starting Legacy Farmer. You also may know too that the whole beginning of Legacy Farmer was setting up whole life insurance policies for farmers or ranchers because the policies just fit in great with the overall estate plan, especially when it comes to trying to figure out how to distribute assets between kids and making sure that, the kid that wants the farm operation gets the farm operation and the other two kids, for example, get cash from a whole life insurance policy and things like that. I took advantage of an opportunity to go down there, and it was a big move for us, right? We packed up and moved our family. It was my wife, and we had 3 kids at the time, all little. I remember, Riley and Hayden and Ryan would have been, 5, 4, and 3. So we were in it, right? To say the least. If you're a parent, then you know that we were in it. Anyway, so we made this decision to make this big, massive jump and go from Kansas to Utah. So we get moved down there, and everything is kind of getting started and stuff like that. And the reality is that we moved down there because of promises and commitments that I had from the partners that I was going down there to essentially work with. And unfortunately, we were down there for about 5 months or so, and everything got shut down. Like literally full stop. We had this plan. I packed up, moved my family 14 hours, almost 1,000 miles away from home. Ultimately, one person made a decision that shut everything down. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I saw this person that made that decision last week out at an event I was at in California. And it was good for us to be able to reconnect and talk about that time because, guys, I packed up and moved my family, right? I sacrificed everything. I literally put all my money on that horse to win the race. And ultimately, nothing happened, right? And I came back essentially to Kansas with my tail between my legs. And at this point in my life where it was extremely challenging, it was extremely dark during that time. Man, it's just one of those challenging times you go through as a business owner where, again, you start to question everything, right? You start to question your life, your purpose. Why am I going through this? Why am I doing all this? Is it in God's plan for me to actually achieve what I want to achieve in my life? And, or am I just not cut out for this? Am I not meant for this? You know what I mean? And so those are some of the things that you're just going to go through. And that's what I was going through in that time there. Now, again, I met with this person last week, and it was just interesting to kind of discuss that, right? And also take a look back and see how many things had transpired then. And now this person that ultimately made that decision that I got to talk to last week, there was some guilt and shame that they had over making that decision, right? It was also a difficult time in their life, and they had a lot of different things going on. And the reality was, they had too many things going on to where they had to start cutting things out, right? And they knew that when they were cutting things out, there was going to be collateral damage there. And me and my family just happened to be a part of that collateral damage during that time. Now, the thing is though, and what I wanted to share with this person was, it was obviously a very dark time. I was questioning everything, and I had to pack up and move my family back. Now, when it came time to move back to Kansas in January of 2019, I believe, it was like January 2nd of 2019, I hauled the first trailer back by myself. If you've ever driven through Utah and then going into Colorado and stuff, you understand like the scenery and everything out there is just like mind blowing. It's so awesome and beautiful just to see, God's design of the world that we live in and everything like that. It's something that'll leave you in kind of shock and awe as you're driving through, especially in Utah for me. But anyways, on that road back though, and on that trip back, I stopped at my parents' house in Tribune, Kansas, and stayed there for the night before I finished the trip on to Hays, Kansas, where we currently live. The thing is that night after we got back, remember, this is a very dark time in my life, and I had the first original thought or idea of, hey, I should drive out to the feed yard in the morning and just film a video. because I still plan to start this. I'd wrote down the word legacy farmer 3 months prior to us moving back. It was literally Thanksgiving or around that time of 2018. I'd wrote down that's a word. I designed the first logo in PowerPoint, which is just funny looking back at everything and how much things have changed. I wrote that down and I got the idea that night of, hey, I'm going to go out to the feed yard, and which is now deserted and everything like that, and was back then too, and film the first video for Legacy Farmer. And little did I know what would transpire from that video, right, guys? The reality is, I am not in front of you today. We do not have the community that we have in Legacy Farmer. We do not have the software called Farmer Metrics. We do not have anything. I literally don't have anything unless I have that idea come to me and go out and film that first video. Now, the thing is, though, is this is what's frustrating about life sometimes, is when you go through those really painful periods, and about 6 to 12 months later, you start seeing the pieces that are lining up in your life now that God has put into your pathway, to where you understand and you start to realize that, hey, everything I went through, I had to go through. I had to experience that level of pain. I had to experience that level of failure. I had to experience everything that I felt in that moment in order for God to trigger the thought and trigger the idea in my mind to go out and film the first video for Legacy Farmer. And then everything took off from there. Now, the reason I share all this with you guys is because when this person shut everything down in my life, right, and completely what I felt like at the time destroyed my life, destroyed my future, destroyed my family, took advantage of us, all these things, right? I had nothing but a lot of hate and resentment towards this person. When you zoom out, right, and time passes by and you start to really look at the sequence of events that happened in your life, you start to really recognize and understand that, hey, I had to go through this. But the question that entered my mind with this person that made that decision was, okay, was it really that person that made the decision? Because whenever we go through trialing times and stuff like that, the first thing we want to do is have blame and resentment towards the person or whoever did this to you, right, and caused this pain in your life. That's the first thing we want to do. And I had to ask the question, like, okay, was it this person that really made the decision, or was it God? And God was using this person to make sure the sequence of events in my life lined up to where he put me on the path that I'm on right now. That's a very interesting thought experiment to really think about, because if I think about it that way, then I have no reason to be angry at the person that God put into my life to make sure I change course and go down the pathway that he had meant for me. You know what I mean? And like, it's very eye-opening and very frustrating at the same time, because now once you start to see this, you start to look back at every challenging time in your life. And then, 12 months, 18 months, maybe it's 5 years down the road, you're like, yeah, I can see exactly why God put me through that. Like, I can see it. It's very irritating and frustrating, because once things started working in Legacy Farmer and the network and everything that we were building here really started to take off, I'm just like, come on, like, God, really? This is that, like, really, you had to put me through that? And now I can't even be mad at the guy, because I have the awareness to think through, like, okay, that was just your way of getting me to shift course and change things and start heading down the different direction that you had planned for me all along, right? And that's what's really frustrating about it. So I share all of this with you guys is because the way I was thinking about it last week when we were at the event together, and it was just kind of running through my mind, is, we're all on this journey of life, right? And if you look at your life and the journey like a river, sometimes God is going to throw a boulder into the middle of the river, right? And that boulder can be a person, that boulder can be experience, that boulder can be a number of things. But the reality is, the boulder, once you throw it into the river, it's going to cause the river to change course. It's going to cause the river to change direction. And I feel with my entire heart that God put this person into my life and had that person make the critical decision that they had to make in that time, because God needed me to shift the river or the journey of my life and where I was heading. And the only way for him to do that was to put that person into my life, have them make that decision, make me go through that painful experience to awaken me to a lot of certain things, but ultimately to lead me down the pathway to filming that first video. Guys, there's so many things that could have happened to where I don't go film that first video. What if I didn't stop in Tribune that night, that first trailer haul back? What if I would have gotten to a wreck, for example, on the trip back, because I came very close to getting into a wreck in the middle of the Rockies with some road work and some people stopped. There was like a 2-mile hold up on traffic, and I came over a hill and there was a car right there, and I literally missed him by inches. I had to swerve into the other lane. Thank God nobody else was over there, but I had a trailer behind me. Like, I could have died on that trip back. I was that close. And like, looking back at all that, there's so many things that happen where it's inarguable that God was acting in my life to lead me to that point to where I go to my parents' house, I wake up and I film that video the next day, and then I launch it 3 weeks later, not knowing what's going to happen, and then everything starts to take off from there. So guys, I share all this with you because every single one of us has had a very painful experience. A lot of us have blame and resentment towards certain people in our life. I'm not saying that all of them, were justified and things like that, but I'm just having you consider the possibility of changing your perspective on that person and really thinking, okay, was it that person that made the decision, or was it God that brought that person into my life, knowing that they would make that decision to push me down the pathway that he ultimately had planned for me in my future? And when you ask that question, guys, everything kind of changes about your perspective on life and this journey. And you just recognize more and more how much we're not in control about certain things, and that there's a higher power up there called God that is really directing and leading us in every aspect of our life. And sometimes he's got to bring people or experiences in that are going to be extremely painful to literally be the boulder in your river of life so that you change direction and go exactly where he is intending for you to go and become who he is intended for you to become. So my friends, hope this episode gives you some different thoughts and different perspectives on certain people in your life or experiences so that you can look at them through a new lens. And ultimately, I hope it helps you to find some peace and everything over those situations, whether it's a person or experience and things like that. And so you are able to move forward in your life. So my friends, that concludes today's episode. We will catch you on the next one.